There we go. Wow.
1937.
Okay, so Susan, you ready for me to start?
Yes, we're glad you're here, Stephanie, and can't wait to hear about Stuckies.
Yeah, so it's first of all such a blessing to be among y'all, and I look forward to being back in person. Church is one of the things I missed the most during COVID. What I enjoyed the most was the chance to be around my family a lot. And I am still working from home. I adapted. I had some rented office space in Atlanta, but I adapted to working from my home. And so much of what I do running Stuckies is on the road. So it actually has worked out quite nicely. But I'm saying that primarily in the event that one of my kids walks by or my cat walks by, it's because this is my home/office, and welcome. What I love about talking to senior groups is I don't have to explain what Stuckies is. I talk to millennials and sometimes I get these glazed looks like, what is Stuckies? So I don't have to usually explain that to people of a certain wonderful age because you remember when we were at our peak. So I'm going to run through sort of the history of Stuckies and how I came to be on this crazy, completely unexpected journey. Starting at age 53, did a total career pivot and took over Stuckies. Not anything I ever imagined. So I'll share what we're doing now and my new journey. But I want to go back to move forward and tell you how Stuckies all began. And before I get started with our origin story, I want to just tackle an extremely controversial topic, which is how do you say it? How do you say P-E-C-A-N? I joke that I say pecan because I'm from Middle Georgia and that's what I grew up saying. But my grandfather joked, it's pecan when you pick them and pecan when you sell them. So I figure however the buyer wants me to pronounce it, I will say it that way. But people always ask me that. I am by no means an expert, but we do sell a lot of pecans, pecans, however you want to say it, we'll sell you them and they are delicious. This is how we started as a humble roadside stand in Eastman, Georgia, 1937. My grandfather was at the University of Georgia and he had to drop out because they didn't have enough money to continue paying his tuition. And he was farming cotton in Middle Georgia and hated it and wanted to get out. And he started going around Eastman asking for a job, any job. He was looking for a side hustle that would hopefully deliver him out of a life of farming. And a pecan sheller named Mr. Bennett told him, I don't have a job for you, but I have an idea. If you go around the countryside and start buying up pecans, you can sell them to me and mark up the price a penny or two. And that's what he did. And he did that for years. After he finished working the farm, he would drive around and he would often work late in the evenings and fall asleep on the bags of pecans because he was so exhausted. My great-grandmother, his grandmother, loaned him $35 and he jerry-rigged a little Model A Ford to act like a truck. He had this, so he created like the storage in the back. And that's how he got started. He had enough capital to buy those initial pecans and then sell them because he had to have a little bit of money to start buying and he didn't even have that. So my great-grandmother, he started with that $35 loan and the juked up Model A Ford driving around the countryside. And after a couple of years of doing that, he was able to have this little shed and he started selling on the side of the road out of that shed. And I love this photo because it says Schley pecans, 10 cents a pound. I sure wish it was that price again. That's an incredible price. And he did well enough at that he decided he could do even better by selling candy. And he interrupted my grandmother's bridge game one day and said, Ethel, we gotta start making candy out of these pecans. I can sell more. And she didn't know how to make anything. She didn't know how to make candy. She knew how to cook, but she didn't know how to make candy. but she had 6 sisters, and the 7 sisters went in the kitchen and her bridge club, and they figured it out, and they started making pralines, divinity, pecan log rolls, which is what we're most known for, fudge. And then we really started doing well. What I love about that story is that original Bridge Club made all the candy for about 7 years there, the Bridge Club and the sisters. So, and one of those Bridge Club's ladies is one of the only Jewish families in Eastman, Sylvia Rubin. And it's just a kind of a cool story how we got started from such small beginnings. So he got enough money to open up this store in Eastman, Georgia. That was our first store, candy shoppy and pralines. We sold tropical jellies. We started shipping. And he really was the very first roadside retail that became a chain. And he offered motorists what they wanted. They could fill up with gas. They could get a clean restroom, a quick hot snack. He always wanted everything very quick and affordable. And then, of course, he would sell the pecans and the candies and kitschy souvenirs. He started really sourcing products locally. So he was catering to travelers. This was on, he was on the old US, what's now 341. I guess it's always been 341, going to the Georgia coast, the coastal highway. He was on US 1, which was the route going to Florida before the interstate. So he was on all these touristy routes. And so he would sell souvenirs and cater to the vacationing public. Families was mostly his niche. And then, he had 3 stores, also Kingsland, Georgia, and Unadilla, Georgia. And then World War II hit. And he had really hard times. Some of y'all may remember there was sugar rationing, and that was his main product. He actually made the candies on site in the stores. He had husband and wife teams who ran the stores, and they would make the product right there on site with his recipes. And when they had sugar rationing, suddenly his main product couldn't be made anymore. And there was gas rationing. People were traveling less. And he had to figure out rapidly what to do, or he was going to lose his stores. One of the stores he shut down because he couldn't afford to keep it open. Another store, moonshiners stole all his sugar to make liquor, and they burned the store down. And so he was left with that one store in Eastman. And the way he was able to turn things around, 2 things. One is he bought a very cheap stick candy plant in Jacksonville, Florida. And so he got more sugar. He got more sugar rationing if he owned that plant, because he was employing people and keeping the economy going. And he would take some of that sugar from the stick candy plant and use it for Stuckey's products. And then he also started selling to the troops. And that's what turned him around. During the war, in those ration kits, there was Hershey's chocolate, there was Stuckey's candy, there was Wrigley's spearmint gum. So a lot of the brands that we know and love, M&M's, they got through the war years by selling to the troops. Not only was he able to sell to the troops, but he started manufacturing candy because he had to scale up to have the quantity he needed. So that's how he got in the candy making business. And he learned to package candy. Before, he just made it on site, sold it immediately, wrapped it in a brown paper bag. If you remember those old brown cones, he would roast pecans and put them in those cones and sell them fresh. So he had to package them. And so he started coming up with these packaging, these beautiful boxes as well, because he was already manufacturing and packaging. And he got his big break was actually right near the end of the war. Rich's department store in Atlanta bought a bunch of packaged candies. And so he had to scale up very rapidly. He had to get a ton of sugar. So there's kind of a dark story in our history here. He went to Florida and got sugar from a man he knew, and he didn't ask any questions about where the sugar came from. And a couple months later, the FBI came knocking, and he had been buying black market sugar from the mafia. So he turned on him. Fortunately, he lived, but he told the FBI, he said, "I'm just a candy man. I was just buying sugar." So he got off from that, but that was a little bit of an adventure to get the sugar he needed to fill orders. So post World War II is when we took off. GIs came home, they remembered our product from their ration kits, the economy's booming, people are having babies, they're buying cars, they're getting on the roads, they're going on vacation. It's a time of prosperity. It's the greatest generation, which some of you are part of, so you remember this. And he started not only rebuilding the stores that he'd lost, but building new stores. And that's when they started to really expand. And I love these old pictures. When I bought Stuckey's, my mother gave me 6 boxes of archival materials that nobody had seen in 50 plus years. And suddenly all these beautiful images, I started bringing them to life. I've digitized them. I'm putting them out on social media and I'm sharing the story. So a large part of what I do now is storytelling and letting people know how entrepreneurs, not just my grandfather, but other entrepreneurs of that era, really took an idea and came from nothing and made it something big, like Kimmons Wilson with Holiday Inn, Howard Johnson's, Colonel Sanders with Kentucky Fried Chicken, Truett Cathy, Chick-fil-A. All of these brands were just started by largely men, but they had women often involved. They just didn't get all the credit, who had a great idea and they worked hard. So his stores were run by husband and wife teams. They lived in the stores. And I just love that because they took pride in the business, and it showed because you walked in the stores and you got a sense of place and welcoming. We were always a hospitable brand. Even during the era of Jim Crow laws, we were never segregated. We were a place where anyone could stop, no matter your color, and you were welcome. And so it's that tradition of Southern hospitality that carries on to this day. And people would just have this unique, fun, local experience. Often the husband and wife teams would make their own products for the snack bar. You would find local products for sale. You would get a real sense that you were at a Stuckey's in Sunnyside, Georgia, or you were at a Stuckey's in Paris, Texas, or you were at a Stuckey's in Somerton, South Carolina. You got a sense of place. There was consistency in the quality, but every store was unique. And I think that's something lacking today in the chains that we see. One of my favorite parts about his old stores, and he was really smart for someone who didn't have formal education, he studied people. And that's how he ran his stores. That was his retail philosophy, was really making this experience consumer focused. And he wanted visitors to walk in and feel like they were in a candy shop. He created a bit of an obstacle. It was almost like a maze when you walked in his stores, where you would have to go all around rows of merchandise to get to where you wanted to go. So the restroom was in one corner and the snack bar was in the other corner. And he made you go through all of these walls of walls and piles of merchandise to get there. And my favorite was what I called the wall of candy. Every store at the back wall was a wall of candy. You had to walk by that wall to get to the restroom. And inevitably you would walk out after using the restroom with some candy. Part of the experience that I loved was a lot of our old stores would have things like honeybee hives and talking mynah birds. One store got a talking mynah bird, and next thing you knew, 50 stores had them. They all wanted that talking mynah bird. This is the only photo I could find of that talking mynah bird. It's from an old Stuckey's employee magazine. What's funny about it was a story about Indian visitors. So treating our foreign visitors with hospitality and letting them know what this country is like. And the irony of this is that the mynah bird is native to India. So that little girl on the right just looks so disappointed. And I think it's because she's not seeing anything exotic or different. She can get a mynah bird at home. So it's probably the only visitor who didn't think that mynah bird was just so unique. So that's the only picture I have remaining of a mynah bird. Unfortunately, we no longer offer those. There's health regulations, but I'm actually talking to a guy who does animatrix about recreating a mynah bird. That is my dream, to have a talking mynah bird again. I like this picture because it shows the cars, and my grandfather really was mindful of the customer experience, like I said, and he would study the cars in the parking lots, and he always looked for the license plates. He wanted to know where were his customers coming from? Were they on vacation? Was there a luggage rack? Did it look like it was a family? And he also wanted the parking lots full. So he would get all his employees to bring cars and park them outside in the parking lot, because people are more likely to pull over and stop if they think a place is busy and popular. So he really paid a lot of attention to detail. At its peak, this would have been like in the 1960s, we had a trucking company and we had a sign painting company. And I love these old images of the men who worked in the sign company. We had a lot of them were made of plastic, but they were also the traditional billboards that were painted. A big turning point for us was obviously the interstate highway system being built under President Eisenhower in 1956. It took decades for that to be complete, but many of small towns where we operated were suddenly cut off from traffic. And very strategic decision that many businesses of that era did not make. He chose to shutter those stores and move to the interstate. And because of that, he not only kept his business alive, it thrived. And he used it as an opportunity to change the look and the feel of his stores, to really create something that was a consistent branded store that would stick in people's memories. So his stores went from looking like this, which were kind of these, almost looking like a home, to these classic stores, to what a lot of people know as a Stuckey's, this sloped roof and the zigzag carport. And he got an exclusive deal to sell Texaco on the interstate. So we co-branded with Texaco. So people really would know to look for those blue roofs. And I love this, traveling on beautiful Interstate 80. Not many postcards would boast about an interstate, but at the time it was a big deal, and they put it on their postcard. And the stores really grew once we started getting on the interstate. And at our peak, we had 368 stores in 40 states. This is a better image, and I actually have this photo in my house. The arrow on the left is really hard to see, but my grandfather had himself painted into that picture, and he's got this real mischievous smile on his face. And on the right is his secretary. Now they call it admin or executive assistants, but back then it was his secretary, Elva Lee Connell, who was with him for his entire career. And she had herself painted in, she commissioned the painting. So I love that she put herself in this nice gold car. That's my grandfather talking to one of the store owners. And one of my favorite stories about him is what I call the coffee story. And he's drinking coffee in this picture. He would get in his car and get a cup of coffee and start drinking. And when he needed to pull over and nature called, he judged how far apart that was from when he started to when he needed to pull over. And that's how far apart he would cite his stores. So that was his so-called scientific consumer research, how he knew how far apart to space those stores. And thanks to that, I think he probably is like me, had to pull over a lot. There's a lot of Stuckey's. I told him there'd be probably double the stores if I'd been the one drinking the coffee. One of the things I really love about us is we are home of the road trip. We are synonymous with the road trip. We peaked when the road trip peaked. And so many people, when they think of Stuckey's, they think of those family vacations or two girlfriends setting off. And all these images I've found since taking over Stuckey's that people have just posted. And it's just this wonderful, special time in our country's history when taking a vacation and getting on the road, not necessarily dealing with airports and baggage claim and security check and long lines, but you just got in your car and you would pull over and you would see these special places, not just Stuckey's, but you would see alligator farms and Weeki Wachee and putt-putt courses and the world's largest belt buckle and rocking chair. And those places to me is what defines this country, and Stuckey's was part of that. And we were also part of the Mad Men golden age of advertising. Because we are very thrifty and small and bootstrapping it, I've actually just repurposed a lot of these old ads and I'm running them on Facebook and Instagram, and they're doing great. Why pay an artist to create original material when we've got this amazing artwork that is still relevant today, because retro is cool again, and this stuff sells like crazy. Anytime I use these ads, it generates sales. The numbers are really amazing to see. Just more images. I love this. Pack your trip with pleasure. Just such great copy, the way they talked, and any trip's a pleasure trip. Relax, refresh, refuel. I just love the slogans and the jingles. I've got some of the old jingles that I play on Facebook videos, and people still love them. So what happened to Stuckey's? We had a downfall when the road trip had its demise, and that's largely attributed to a couple of things. The Arab oil embargo made gas really expensive, so people stopped driving as much. And then the Airline Deregulation Act occurred, and that made domestic air travel affordable, and it was unique and fascinating, and people started flying. It was much easier to go cross country in a flight as opposed to getting in your car. So people just started traveling less. And my grandfather sold Stuckey's in 1964 to Pet Dairy, which is best known for their evaporated milk. And he sold primarily because he made a lot of money and he was ready to check out. And it's indicative of a lot of entrepreneurs of that era. All the ones I named before, with the exception of Truett Cathy, they sold their businesses, and that was what they did. They came from nothing in the Great Depression. They bootstrapped it, they built wealth, and then they sold it and made a lot of money and retired happy. And that's what my grandfather did. And unfortunately, the president of Pet, who my grandfather had sold to, and they had a very tight relationship, he died unexpectedly of a heart attack in 1970. And Ted Gamble was his name. And then after his death, they promoted from within someone who didn't get the Stuckey's brand, and we started faltering. Pet did not support and nurture the brand like they should have. And then coupled with all these other factors, stores started shuttering. And then Pet got bought out in a hostile takeover by a Chicago railroad conglomerate that totally didn't get our brand. So assets were sold. The company just took a complete nosedive. We lost hundreds and hundreds of stores. So fast forward 1985, my dad, who'd served in Congress for 10 years from Eastman, Georgia, he left Congress, did not run for re-election, started a company called Interstate Dairy Queen Corporation, and he had the franchise rights to Dairy Queens on the interstate highway system. So that was his business. He was very, very successful with that. And the company that had Stuckey's pretty much gave my dad Stuckey's at that point because they were losing so much money. They wanted it off their books. And my dad was completely immersed in his own business. And he took Stuckey's on because it was his dad's business, but he was focused on Dairy Queen. And so what he started doing was just merging Stuckey's with Dairy Queen. And he owned these Dairy Queen stores. So he would put Stuckey's in with Dairy Queens, and he would make some of the existing Stuckey's Dairy Queen stores. Hold on, my batteries are dying. Sorry. I thought. Hold on.
Have a commercial break. Raise your hand.
Well, I don't
Raise your hand if you've been to a Stuckey's store.
I don't know what,
Yeah.
Almost everybody's been to a Stuckey's store. There you go.
flag is missing. Hold on just a second. Robert, Beverly, can you please see if this is
Mike.
on Robert stuff?
My commercial break is my mom wanted to share. I posted on Facebook. My mom wanted to say they always begged to stop at a Stuckey's on their road trips in Florida.
Hold on.
Her parents wouldn't let her stop because they always packed their snacks in the car to save money, of course, with 4 children. And so my mom was sad that she never got to stop at Stuckey's as a child, and she always wanted to.
Unplugged mine.
Very sweet.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize it was not plugged in, and my son had grabbed my plug by accident. Okay, so my dad ran Stuckey's. At that point, we had less than 100 stores. He kept it alive. He kept the business running. He got it back in family hands. But he sold his Dairy Queen company to Warren Buffett in 2012. He and his business partners all retired, and they pretty much left a skeleton crew of 2 people running Stuckey's. At that point, there was a distribution facility and about 65 franchised operations, most of which were like a store within a store, a Stuckey's section in a pilot truck stop, or Stuckey's in a Wilco Travel Plaza. There were very few standalone stores. The ones that were stores within a store, frankly, over time, with neglect, started looking really shabby and were being pushed out of those stores. So we were losing locations, losing money. The company, starting 2015 forward, was not profitable. And fast forward, 2019, November 2019, I literally get an email from my dad's former business partner saying they wanted to sell their shares of Stuckey's. Did I want to buy them? And I was the only one in the family interested in buying. There were outside investors. So if I didn't buy, it would have fallen out of family hands again. So I sunk my life savings. I bought a company that had 6 figures of debt, but what I bought was a brand. And within 6 months, we started turning a profit, even with COVID. And how I did it was just like what I'm doing with y'all. I told the story of the brand. I said, we're back. Because even when my dad had it, and he did a really good job with what he had inherited, because not inherited, he got a mess, but he was focused on Dairy Queen. So the public really hadn't had this push of like, Stuckey's is back, we're here, we're in the family. So I just started putting that story out, didn't have any budget for marketing because I'd sunk my money into just buying the company, but people started listening, people started selling our product. And the way I've turned the brand around is we've got now some 400 retailers that are selling our product. We're in 250 Ace Hardware stores. We're in hundreds of mom and pop stores. We're at Dollywood. We're at Jekyll Island State Park. We're in gift shops. There's a Holiday Inns are independently owned and operated. So we're in several Holiday Inn gift shops. We're in tourist attraction gift shops. So Candler Park Market carries our product. So we're slowly bringing the company back that way. And then I brought on a business partner and we bought, there's my business partner. He is a 3rd generation pecan farmer. And we jointly bought a candy company in January 29th. And so we now own a candy company. We're making candy for the first time since 1964. We also own a pecan shelling plant and a fundraising company with some 800 clients. So churches, schools, Girl Scouts, well, Girl Scouts sell cookies, but we sell pecans to all these organizations and they sell the pecans for fundraising. So we bought that business as well. And we're turning the company around by making our own product. I've started merchandising. We have a Stuckey's beer. We're very soon to launch a Stuckey's ice cream. I'm talking with a couple of franchise fast food stores that want to put Stuckey's products on the menu. So we're building the brand that way. I'm about to ink a deal with a company that's going to start making product for us, merchandising for us, and help us get into a lot of big box retailers that way. We are talking to about a dozen major big box retailers that you would all know about carrying our products. So we're about to really dramatically scale up. We have a classic candy line. This is product from our new operations. So we're making a full line of snack pecans, not just the candies. These are some of our displays that we put in stores. We've got one that looks like a little Stuckey store. So even if we only have 20 standalone stores still remaining, we do not own any of them. They're all independently owned and operated, but we're very grateful those are still around. Some of them don't look so good. They need some love, but there's still a few out there. But we're building the brand by bringing these little mini displays into stores and selling the product, and we're gradually bringing the company back. These are some of our mini retail partners where you can pull over and you can find not only our product, but a lot of our retail partners create these wonderful displays that really show off the uniqueness of the brand. And that's it. Whenever I can feel overwhelmed, and it's a very overwhelming task I've taken on. We went from 7 employees when I started, and we're now at, during pecan season, 120. So a lot of growth in a very short period of time. Hasn't even been 2 years, but I feel like the company is really poised for comeback. And I'm just so blessed to have this experience. So with that, I will happily take your questions.
Stephanie, this is Dave Spino. One thing I want to mention to you, we lived in New Jersey and my grandparents lived in Florida, down in the Palm Beach area. And almost every year we drove that. And I know we ate in Stuckey's in various towns along Route 1, 301.
Yes.
This was before the Interstate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was-
Yep.
But I'm curious, your grandfather he must have been a very smart man, but he had a vast array of understanding how to run a business from top to bottom. I mean, marketing, product, how to get the product. In other words, I guess he had to contract with growers, transportation, all of
Yes.
that. Where did he get all that intelligence, so to speak? Because that's
Well, I
massive.
think any great leader, and there's so much to tell about his story. And in fact, I've got a book deal. So I'm really excited that I'm going to be sharing that story in a book. And I've just got to block off some time to hunker down and write the darn thing. But he surrounded himself with people who could fill in his gaps. And any great leader does that. No CEO of a company. And as he grew it, at his peak, he had over 1,000 employees and the 368 locations and the trucking company, the candy company, the sign painting company. You can't do it all. So he just got really smart people who filled in his gaps, and he had a strong team. I think the other thing was he did have just like a strong gut sense of what people like, and then he studied. He really went to his stores. He watched the customers. He saw what they wanted, and he prioritized employees first and customers second. And that's what he was about. You treat your employees right, you're going to treat the customers right. It was interesting to me, though, and this is why I have focused on the product. I studied his business method. I knew him as Big Daddy, typical Southern name. I knew him as my grandfather. I was 12 when he died. I did not know him as a businessman. He sold the company before I was even born. He was retired and traveling and spending time with family. So I didn't know that business side of him until I bought his company and I inherited his papers, and I'm reading through interviews with him and newspaper articles on him, and I'm learning what he did, and he came to life for me as a businessman, a completely different person. And what fascinated me was he didn't make his money off his stores, because he didn't own or operate stores. He made his money off of two things: the sale of gas, and unfortunately that gas deal is long gone with Texaco, and he made his money off of the sale of product. And he made his own product as far as the candy and the pecans. But then he had a distribution facility, and he sourced all these products that the store sold. And part of the franchise deal was you had to exclusively get all of your product sourced from him. Mm-hmm. So that's how he made his money. It was to sell a product. It's just like Cracker Barrel. They make their money from that gift shop. It's not the food. The food just gets you in the door.
Right.
He sold the product. So that when I tell people I'm turning the company around by selling product, they're like, oh, but your grandfather, he had all the stores. He made all this money off the stores. I'm like, no, he made his money off the product. That's what I'm doing. We own a distribution facility. We own a candy plant. I'm following his playbook. That's what I'm doing. The stores are just branding. It's just marketing.
It must be incredibly satisfying to you, not only that you're running a business and bringing this business back, but your family connection in this business. I'm just curious if you have any comment about just how you're feeling about the fact that you're perpetuating what's the word I want to think of? But, what?
A brand.
A brand. I mean, a real
It's
brand.
awesome.
I mean, you mentioned M&M's. You mentioned Howard. We used to stay at Howard Johnson. I mean, eating Howard Johnson's all the time. Dairy Queen. These are brands.
Yeah. In fact, my dream is I study entrepreneurs because I don't have a background in this. I'm a lawyer and I'm head of sustainability for the city of Atlanta. And I learn really by reading stories. of entrepreneurs and how they did it and taking lessons from them. And one I love is Steve Madden, who made shoes. Some of you may know his brand. And he was extremely successful. He was CEO, he was founder, and he has segued into a new role as chief brand officer. And he brought on about 7 years ago a CEO who runs a company, and he's the chief brand officer. And that's what he wants to do. So that's my goal. Like I would be happy not to be CEO. I would be happy to be chief brand officer. I see myself as keeper of the brand. And really the way I brought this company to profitability, one, I got a super smart president who has a mind for finance and operations. And we've got an operations person at the candy plant. So I'm like, I got whip smart people who are helping me do this. And we own it jointly. Like I'm sharing in the wealth. My business partner and I jointly own the company. So we rise and fall together. But I spend a lot of my days, in addition to helping run the company and doing sales, getting the brand out there, responding to stories. I get about 20 stories a day from people that are very emotional and heartfelt about taking vacations or their memories of being at Stuckey's. And I respond to all of them. And that's part of what I do. It's like the keeper of the brand. You know, and
I've got one last question and I'll step back. I'm sure others do. Your grandfather obviously had lined up a lot of pecan growers. I don't know how to say it. Are any of those pecan growers back in the fold of your product, growing and delivering the products to you? And
well, he didn't have a shelling facility. He bought pecans, but he didn't shell them. So to answer your question, I do not know any of the pecan farmers he bought his pecans from, other than Royce Atwell, who founded Atwell Pecans, and that's a company we bought. So my grandfather bought pecans from Mr. Atwell, and we now own Mr. Atwell's plant. Mr. Atwell founded his shelling plant in 1935. They added the candy plant in 2008, and they added the fundraising business like 2012. And so we bought that, his company.
cool. Thank you.
It's kind of a nice continuity. And then my business partner is a second generation pecan farmer, and they've managed the Stuckey Pecan Orchard, which is not owned by Stuckey's Corp. It's owned by my dad, but they've managed our pecan orchard for 20 years. So my business partner is actually, he's a pecan farmer.
Cool. Thank you.
Stephanie, Cindy Runyon here.
Hey,
Glad
Cindy.
to see you. Hi. We've learned a lot about Stuckey's, but I'd like to know more about your family. How's Beverly? And I can't remember your son's name. And where are they? They must be grown by now, just about.
Beverly's in the kitchen making lunch. She is and thank you for that question. She's a rising sophomore at Woodward Academy, and Robert just finished his freshman year at Auburn.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
And we'll be back at church soon.
Stephanie,
well, at least Beverly and I.
Beverly was in the toddler Sunday school class with Stephanie as a volunteer Sunday school teacher when I first came to Glenn. So,
Beverly,
well,
come say hey. Here she is.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
When you were a little girl.
Yeah.
I have a very practical question. Besides, obviously, we can go on Stuckeys.com and order all the pecan log rolls we want.
Yeah.
And I heard you have a new divinity recipe I want to try out.
Yes, it's yummy.
But so now that the pandemic is hopefully closing out, at least for those of us who are vaccinated, waiting for my kids to get vaccinated, where's our closest Stuckey's to Atlanta? How can we get there? What's our closest road trip?
It's a bit of a drive. It's Perry, Georgia. I-75 south. You can also pull over. We've got the store within a store concept in Jackson, Georgia at the Jones Petroleum on exit 205. And that's only about a 30-minute drive south.
Okay.
And they've got a huge section. They buy about $10,000 to $12,000 worth of product from us every 2 to 3 weeks. So they just turn
Okay.
through our product. They're constantly placing orders.
As-
So that's a
As
good
we
one.
look at future programs for Friendship Group hitting the road, maybe we'll go to Jackson.
Right?
I
And
love
I am trying to get into more accounts in Atlanta. We just when I brought on my business partner, he had a small pecan snack company. So we merged with him, and he had a sales rep. And so that sales rep, I'm now transitioning to selling Stuckey's, and he's working the Atlanta area. So if you know any retailers, like I've got to pester the Ace Hardware on Scott Boulevard. They were
Yes.
selling our product and they're out. So I need to go back over there and pester Tony, like, you got to start selling our candy again. So
You said you're in
we'd
the
love to
Candler,
be in local retailers.
you're in Candler Park Market, but we should ask Oak Grove Market on some of us on the Oak
I
Grove.
would love Oak Grove. I talked to Grant Park Market last week. They're ready to place an order. I've just got to get the sales sheet together and get the purchase order done. So I'm doing a lot of this stuff. Like I'm getting the orders processed, getting the shipping coordinated with our warehouse. It's a lot of bootstrapping right now.
Right. That's great. Well, any other questions?
Well, I have the opposite story of Dave. I saw the Stuckey signs all of my childhood growing up, but we never I guess,
stopped.
passed one, or the family wouldn't let us stop. And
Yeah.
So I'm so looking forward to at some point going back to Ace Hardware once they get
Yeah.
restocked
Yeah.
and getting some. That's so awesome. What an awesome job you're doing,
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Yeah,
Yay.
it's wonderful to hear that she has turned a little northern on me, the fact that we'd stop at Stuckey's and they did. the same.
And I did, yeah, from New Jersey. I was from Virginia.
So Susan, are we doing coffee hours again? When is that going to come back?
Yes, hopefully we'll be doing the Holy Grounds kind of between the two services, not until after Labor Day is when we're kind of pushing.
Okay.
We're doing soft start throughout August, and then yeah, that would be a fun place. Although the problem is we have to be nut free here at Gwen. So that kind of puts a damper on things with many of your products.
I'm trying to think because I was going to say I could bring pecan log rolls, even if they're in the package and people just take them with them. Like
Right.
just
So we might do
here.
something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
like grab and go. Pretty much everything darn nut allergies. I will say pecans are a lot less allergen prone than peanuts. Not to bash the peanut, but pecans are, people are less inclined to have an allergy to pecans.
Right.
So
yeah, we'll have to brainstorm what we can do there.
yeah, no, even our cheese, we make these delicious cheese buttons, but they've got pecans in them. Everything.
She's going through her inventory right now. You can see the wheels.
I mean, the stuff that we do have, like taffy and toffee. I mean, I don't know if you really want that. It's not. This is more like a little. You have this with coffee.
Right.
Hey, Stephanie, a possible retail outlet on La Vista Road is David's.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a fresh vegetable place, but they sell a lot of other things, and they sell Claxton fruitcakes.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. In fact, we've been selling Claxton fruitcakes since the 1940s.
Yeah.
And the Claxton factory is about 20 miles from our candy plant. So it's pretty cool. They've promised me I'm going to get a tour soon. I told them we can trade off tours. They can tour ours. But yeah, any place that sells Claxton fruitcake or moon pies or Goo Goo clusters, Little Debbie snack cakes, like all our brands are very compatible. And I know people with all those brands now. It's really fun. It's like a little nostalgic candy club. We all know each other.
Well, I hope you get a place in Unadilla, because that's dear to our hearts. Because in the 60s, we used to dive to Florida with the children.
Yeah.
And
That store is still there. It's just abandoned. I keep buying a lottery ticket, and short of winning the lottery, I'm just going to have to either get financing or earn enough revenue to start buying stores, but it's very costly. Each store is going to be $500,000 to $1 million.
Oh my.
Plus you have to operate it.
Yeah.
So
Were you volunteering for that, Alan? When did you volunteer for that Unadilla store?
yeah.
No, I'm just suggesting that I remember going through all those
Yeah,
walls of candy to get to the damn restroom.
yeah.
Oh, I know.
That might be a great time to end our recording. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm gonna
Thank
end the
you.
recording now, but we can chit chat. So thanks for being here.
Thank you,
This has been
Stephanie.
fun.